Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about overcoming addictions, any type of addiction. Um, this information kind of came to me on the fly. I really I can't say that I am an expert at addictions. I only had an incident of this one time in my life. I wouldn't even say it was an addiction, but I did have a bad habit with uh, for a very short, brief period of time with drugs. And I'll go into that story maybe a little bit later. But uh, first, I just want to talk about what kind of spawned this conversation, which is I was at work and I was talking with an individual. I was doing a chest X-ray on the person, and the guy was talking to me about his smoking. He wanted to quit, and I never push anybody to quit or anything. I always feel like it's not so much important what you are doing, but why you are doing it. And if you have this thought in the back of your head that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, you have this belief that what you're doing is not good for you. It has some type of negative impact on your body, such as smoking. Um, I believe that it is possible for people to smoke, and people have done it, smoke for long periods of time, and well into what we considered what would be considered a very good age to live, in their 90s, and late 80s, smoking, and live a very pretty much normal life, and so I believe that it's possible to smoke and still not really receive some of the negative impact that's probably portrayed in our media. I would say that's probably a lower percentage. I will agree that maybe many of the people that are smoking are probably um, they probably have a higher incidence of all the bad things that they are mentioning in the media. I'll admit that, but do I know that this particular individual is going to experience, lung cancer at the age of, 55 or 60 or something like that? I don't know. I can't predict that. So so I never really get into any of that. But this individual was talking to me, and he was talking to me about he wanted to see if I knew a good hypnotist, excuse me, uh, to because he has tried a couple other things to try to quit. He actually did quit for a while and then kind of restarted, and um, and then as he was saying that, I really all of a sudden something just kind of came out of me, and I thought it was I was surprised that that information kind of came out of me. I didn't realize that was what I was going to say, but I'll kind of just go over that with everyone. Is that basically I was telling him that I didn't think he really needed a hypnotist, um, but if he really wanted to quit, that what he could probably do is first of all realize one key thing, is that there's a person that smokes, and the person that smokes is going to always have the desire to have a cigarette. And what he's trying to achieve is a non-smoker. He's a smoker now, and that is the person that and the role that he is playing. He is playing the role of a smoker. A smoker smokes. What he wants to be is a non-smoker. A non-smoker doesn't even have the urge to smoke. So what he has to realize is those are two entirely different people and two entirely different roles. And if he wants to become the non-smoker, this non-smoker doesn't have those thoughts and those urges of smoking. Couple things is, there's a certain physical addiction that may be there with tobacco. That usually leaves within, if I'm not mistaken, within 3 days. The physical addiction is over. Then, but that's not even the hardest part with most people. The hardest part with most people is the mental aspect, because they still identify themselves as the smoker. Certain things that you do as a smoker, you smoke, after you eat, you want to have a cigarette, or certain rituals that you go through that, after this happens, then I need to have a cigarette and stuff like that. Those are just mental labels of the smoker. The smoker individual has those things embedded in their identity. Non-smoker doesn't have any of that stuff. So one way to kind of separate and get some space between you and the smoker, because one thing to really realize, and I didn't tell this to the person, but one thing to really realize is you're neither either one of those things. You're you're kind of playing a role, but you're actually the person that's watching the role. But one thing that you can do to, if you wanted to shift between the smoker to the non-smoker, is every time is to use the smoking process as the ritual to overcome it. Every time you decide to take a cigarette, question yourself, why am I deciding to do this? Make it conscious. Make it a conscious choice that you're making. Realize that if you're deciding to do it, now it's not a habit. A habit is something that you don't realize you're doing. You're kind of doing it, with no conscious intent. If you start to ask yourself every time you do, you have a cigarette, every time you have that cigarette and you decide, okay, why am I doing this? And you'll come up with some answer, which is fine. And you could decide, well, I'm either going to have it or I'm not. And that's fine. And then next time you have a cigarette, same thing. Why am I having a cigarette? Why am I doing this? And continue to question. Question those thoughts. Bring those thoughts and evaluate them. They're going to eventually seem very nonsensical to you, because you're going to realize, you're not going to have a real good reason why you're doing it. It may be, you don't want to feel a certain feeling. You may not, maybe because you think that you're going to feel irritated, if you don't smoke or something like that, and you lash out at somebody because you get irritated because you think that they're, acting ridiculous or something like that. Of course, responding, negatively, excuse me, to somebody that's that's kind of, let's say you typically respond negatively to somebody that you feel is ignorant. Okay, well, if they're ignorant, then they can't help it. So it's kind of ridiculous, almost ignorant of yourself, to respond in a negative way to that person, because they can't help it anyway. So those are things that you could kind of evaluate those thoughts and start saying, okay, wait a minute, does that really make sense? Is the thought that I'm putting my trust in, and the thought that I'm giving an excuse on why I should be smoking, even though I don't really want to, but I'm saying this is what I should be doing, is that really valid? And the more consciousness that you put to that act, now it's not a habit anymore. Now it's a choice. It's a choice. And once you have that choice, then you can decide, who am I now? Am I the smoker or am I the non-smoker? And now you have a choice and a clear path where you've taken the unconscious activity and made it conscious, and now you have a choice. Before, you didn't have a choice because it was all unconscious. You were all just doing something just out of behavior patterns. After I eat, I gotta smoke. Right? After I do this, I gotta smoke. And after, if I get stressed out, I gotta smoke. I gotta do this, I gotta smoke. Um, but now you make this a certain behavior that is conscious, and now you have a choice now, and you can make a clear decision. That you can substitute. I know I'm using cigarettes because that was who I spoke to as a smoker, but you could substitute any type of addictive behavior and do the same thing. It's just making it conscious, making a decision of asking yourself every time you're doing it. Don't stop doing it until you start questioning yourself. Do the act, but bring it to your awareness on why you're doing it. Have that voice in your head tell you, what's the reason? Why am I doing it? What is the cause of this action? You'll come up with an answer and accept it. That's fine. It's okay. Ask yourself again every time you come up with that. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? So eventually bringing that thought up into your mind is that will give you some space and will give you a choice. And then you can decide to do whatever you want to do. You can continue to smoke, you not continue to smoke, or continue to do that addictive behavior, but at least you're doing so in a conscious way. You don't feel like a prisoner. You don't feel like somebody that's doing something that, against your will. You can say, okay, I'm a smoker, but I choose to smoke. This is what I choose to do. I really didn't have any problems with this, in my life, so I can't really say too much about it other than, this information. I don't know where it came from, and I know it works. Yeah, but my only issue in my life, happened very very early on, and when I was like 24, I had a very short span of problems with some drugs. I started doing speed for a very silly reason why I started. It was um, like crystal meth. It was like crank, I guess is what they call it, a slang term. And and I was doing it, and I was in the military at the time. I was in the army, and they drug test you there, so it was definitely something that I was doing that was a high risk thing to do. I could have been in very big trouble in my job, and my life could have really gone down a different road very easily by staying in that that place. Um, I had a couple of bad trips. I had a couple of bad things negative things that happened to me while I was in these high states. It wasn't, even though I started with crank, I went to several different things. I went to acid, and I did, had a couple bad trips with that, and of course with weed as well, all within this short period of time. And I started developing a lot of anxiety, which is no wonder because I was doing a lot of speed. Um, uh, but I remember there was a moment of clarity for me, and I can only attribute that to, I don't know where that space came from me and that behavior. But I remember having kind of an anxiety attack and then kind of a panic attack on a plane ride home from my family, from my parents. I went to my uh, family for vacation, and I was even doing drugs there, and I had a really bad trip, and I ended up in the hospital, and I was honest with my dad, and I was telling him I was doing these things, um, and maybe that's what spawned some of that space. But I had this moment of clarity on the plane, and I started to realize, I'm like, as I'm kind of in this anxious state and sweating, and on the plane, and just very anxious about everything, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I just said, who's doing this to myself? Who is doing this? I'm doing this to myself. And then once you realize that you are the cause of your own misery, you just stop. You don't do that to yourself anymore. And that was why I stopped, because I realized This was a conscious choice I was making. It wasn't nobody else's fault, you know, for me having all this anxiety and anxiousness and ending up in the hospital and stuff for small, tiny pleasures of this drug. But it also had a very downside to it too, and I just finally said I've had enough. So that was really my only experience with that, you know. Um, anyway, I just appreciate everyone's attention for and everybody's that is watching this video. I really appreciate your viewership and um, thank you everyone for watching and take care.